Scott Wheeler of The Athletic, appreciate it. You got 3 guys here, I think, or at least 2. But I wanted
two in town and one one local.
Right. And so, but I wanted to talk to you because you're the guy that does a lot of the prospect stuff, a lot of the draft rankings. Before we get into some other players, we first have to talk about my favorite topic. We call this Gavin McKenna radio here in college hockey because he's all we talked about all year. It was like the one evergreen topic. And I bring that up just because, you wrote an article basically like a few days before I did critiquing his year at that point and maybe dropping in the rankings. And it ruffled a lot of feathers, as mine did too to some extent. But I guess having seen him now for the second half of the year, where do you have him now? As far as the draft is concerned.
I've had 5 lists out. I do 7 lists in advance of the draft, so I've got 2 more coming out, one after U18 Worlds typically, and another sort of immediately before the scouting combine in June. And Gavin's been number 1 on 4 of my 5 lists here to date.
Right.
And there was my midseason list in January. He was number 2 to Ivar Stenberg. My most recent list, he was back to number 1. Gavin is the most talented player in this class. So despite the criticisms early in the season, I don't want that to be misconstrued. Like, Gavin is Gavin still. The playmaking, the ability on the power play, the vision, that is all very, very, very unique in this class. The challenges that Gavin had, particularly in the front half of the season, were about details, about moving his feet, about getting up and under sticks, about getting into battles, about drifting. All of those things are still concerns, but this season revealed some of the flaws in his game and some of the things that he needed to work on. And it was a talking point really with scouts right into the World Juniors, like from October through December, when I texted with people, when I ran into people in East Lansing, when I did that story, when Penn State was in East Lansing. There were moments over the course of the year where people were pretty down on Gavin and quite critical of Gavin. I think everything sort of balanced out. I joked in the fall, and actually in that piece, that there was going to be a 5-point game around the corner. I wasn't sure whether there was going to be an 8-point game around the corner, but the points were always going to come. The production was going to come. They played him so much at Penn State, like
and
25,
he shot the puck
26,
more in the
27,
second half.
28 minutes a game, that it was always going to come for him. The question with Gavin is just, what is he going to be off the puck? That's what he still has to show people. It's what he's going to have to continue to demonstrate. But on the puck, there has never been any real doubt about Gavin's ability.
Yeah, and it's just like I always look, it's an honest critique. I don't hate the kid. I mean, it's just an honest critique, right? I think Penn State did him a bit of a disservice by the hype that they had around him, because
it's a lot of pressure for a 17-year-old kid.
It wasn't his fault. I tried to make that crystal clear myself. Like, he wasn't like the second coming, right? Like, college hockey has had number 1 overall picks before. College hockey has had Adam Fantilli, who was 3rd overall. Macklin Celebrini, Jack Eichel, 2nd. They've had those guys. So they made it sound like, this was the guy who was like, oh my God, they're the greatest player of all time. And so I think, when you saw him, and he understandably had flaws for a 17-year-old, that was like, okay, like what do we see? Because I don't watch Major Junior, so I just see him when he comes to college. I'm like, well, what am I see? He's a good player, but so I don't know.
And he's
that's
still
where
going to be, like if we're in Vegas, if I were setting the betting line, Gavin is still going to be the first overall pick. And I think especially so if it's Vancouver or Calgary, if it's one of those Canadian teams, he will be impossible for those teams, I think, to pass up on. So it's not as though he's all of a sudden what happened with Shane Wright, for example, where Shane Wright just didn't live up to the expectations of exceptional status, and Gavin wasn't even an exceptional status player. But then he goes 4th overall to Seattle. This isn't going to be that. Gavin's not going to go 4th overall.
Capo Caco or one of those Ranger guys who were taken high. I mean, you think he'll be better as a pro than that? Yes,
and frankly, I think we're talking about a point per game NHL talent in the prime of his career. Like, I think we're talking about kind of the names that get thrown around are always Kucherov and Panarin. Kucherov is rich because Kucherov is Kucherov, and he's one of the all-time great wingers in the history of the game. but that Panarin, that's kind of what I imagine he will be.
Is there any scenario you could see where he doesn't go number one at this point?
I would be a little surprised. There are people who believe that Chase Reed of the Sioux Greyhounds and Ivar Stenberg of Frölunda are in that mix. I don't believe that Keaton Verhoff is any longer in that mix.
Say, yeah.
I don't believe that Carson Karls is a realistic first overall pick. Albert Smith, some of these kids.
Yeah.
But it's not out of the question. Depending on who wins the lottery, it's not out of the question that it's Stenberg or Reed. But I think it's still almost certainly going to be Gavin.
And you mentioned Verhoff because he'd been mentioned by some people, and I think that was
that conversation in the fall.
Yeah, but I think he's again a good player, but I didn't see. Like I said, I don't know. I only follow the college guys, so he didn't stand out to me as this guy's going to be number one. But he's still going to be a good player. What do you see? Where do you think he's going to go, or what are the pluses and minuses in his game that's going to matter on draft day?
Keaton is an interesting player. He's a summer birthday. So he's not just young for college hockey, he's young for this draft class. He has been extremely productive. He has played big roles for Hockey Canada at the Hlinka Gretzky Cup and U18 Worlds. U18 Worlds as an underager and a go-to player on that team. This year came, like with Gavin, though, revealed some things he needs to work on. I do wonder, and I've wondered really dating back to U17 Worlds in Sarnia almost 2 years ago now. I've wondered about his boots, and he's a little clumsy over his feet at times, and he's a big kid, and the skating is okay. I don't think it's going to be a major inhibitor for him, but it's just okay.
Yeah.
And then the reads on the puck and the decision-making on the puck have been issues at times for him. And so he has to sort through all of that, but he's a 6'3", 6'4" kid, and if you've seen him off the ice, he looks like a man. Looks like a pro already, and he can hammer it, and he's got some skill, and he's been productive. I know things really cooled off for him in the second half here as they geared up for the playoffs. I think they wanted him to sort of prepare for the playoffs and play a bit of a different style and move pucks quicker and hang on to it a little bit less. And I know that those are all things that they worked on throughout this season with him. But it was a work in progress for him late in the year, especially as the games got tougher. And I think we saw it here in the semifinal. Shifts hemmed into his own zone, some icing, some sloppiness, some scrambling. But Keaton he's still going to be a top 5, top 6 pick in this draft.
There's one other name I wanted to ask you about in particular because it kind of plays into this whole thing we're talking about with guys coming out of junior and younger and need to bulk up is Tynan Lawrence, who jumped from middle of the season to BU. And I think that exposed, I think people at the time were like, oh, let's see what he can do. I mean, he's a top 10. And he didn't really do anything for BU. So now what? Yeah,
Tynan's another one where college hockey's hard, right? Like, it is hard. And I think he learned that. He also... I didn't love the decision, frankly. He was banged up early in the fall this year. He wasn't fully healthy. He'd only played about a dozen games in the USHL to start the year. And I think, frankly, he would have been better off staying in Muskegon, trying to win back-to-back Clark Cup titles with them and going about it that way. He also joined a BU team that was not the BU team of the last few years here this year. Everybody on that team had a tough year. It felt like they just weren't the Jay Pandolfo Frozen Four locks that they've been. And
ran its course there.
Yes, and he also, I think, struggled with the size and the physicality of the college game. He's a very hardworking kid. He's strong for 6 feet. He can skate, he can make plays, he's smart, but the battles and getting pushed off of pucks and that part of it revealed itself to be a bit of a challenge. And I don't believe any longer that he's going to be the first center picked at the start of the year. That's the way it was trending. I would expect that Caleb Malhotra of the Brantford Bulldogs, who's actually a BU commit and is going to be playing with Tynan next year, potentially as their top 2-line centers. I think Caleb's probably going to be the first center picked.
But this is where I'm going with this now. So the overall theme here is that, these younger guys who are not as big yet as like Porter Martone was just a man, right? I think if they redrafted last year, he might, go higher. I loved watching him play this year. But like, it's only because we haven't seen Malhotra in college yet. So we have the vision of him in the dominating junior hockey, just like Gavin did or whatever. Like, are we giving them an unfair advantage almost because we haven't seen them yet in college? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's part of it. Like, these kids who chose to go the college route, I think it'll probably be better for them in terms of their pro career. Will it be better for them in terms of the NHL draft? That's a different question. But the NHL draft really doesn't matter. And Keaton, I think, benefited from learning in college hockey this year. Now, James Patrick, a North Dakota alum who coaches in Victoria, is an excellent coach, and James Patrick would have done a great job with him and Reshny had they decided to stay in Victoria this year. But that test, I think, is an important test for these top kids now, and we're going to see more and more of it. Ryan Lynn has another top prospect in this year's draft class, has now committed to play for David Carl at Denver next year. We're going to see Carson Karls, I think, once his season in the WHL wraps up, commit. So this is the new normal.
Yeah, right. I'm curious if you haven't, this guy's been drafted already, but last guy before you go, Eric Polkamp. Does he have a chance at 5'11" for the NHL? He's not like Quinn Hughes and Lane Hudson that are small but fast and whatnot, but he's a little different player. Does his type of player have a good shot?
I think he does. Yeah. He's a very unique player, which you're kind of hinting at there. Like, he's 5'11", but if you've ever seen him away out, he's tank is the right word. Yeah. And he can hammer it, and he's got the big point shot, and he's physical, and he's competitive.
And he's not slow.
And you're right. He doesn't have the east-west shake and bake that some of these little water bugs now have. But I don't think that will prevent him from becoming a second power play depth defenseman in the league who can maybe score 10 goals with that shot of his in the league. Like, that's kind of how I envision Polkamp.
He's still a decent skater, right? Just doesn't have the moves necessarily. Yeah. So I was just curious. But last thing before I let you go, and I appreciate it, Scott Wheeler of The Athletic with us, is what's the general mood in Canada, now that all this change has happened? And I think a lot of fans, I see it on Twitter a lot, why are these guys going to the NCAA? It's amazing how fast it went from NCAA versus major junior, like a battle, to now the NHL. I think teams are just quickly going like, no, it's like a progression. It's not like one or the other now. And now it's like one to the other.
In Canada, the temperature is... It was hot in the last summer. Yeah. Like, there were some bridges burned and some CHL general managers who didn't like the way that some of the college programs went about their business and their recruiting, and I think they're still navigating that.
Although turnabout was fair play. Sorry to interrupt. For many years, the major junior teams used to pluck guys out. So
no, and it's in a better spot now, I think. Yeah. Like, I think everybody has sort of come to terms with what this looks like now. And the smart GMs in junior hockey in Canada made the decision to quickly align themselves and build relationships with not just NCAA coaches and programs so that they get those guys at the front end when they're 15, 16, but also with agencies and building trust that way with some of the players and their agents, and understanding that, look, at 18, 19, or 20, we're likely going to lose you if you're the real deal.
Right.
It's not the end of the world, though, either for junior hockey in Canada, because at the front end, they're getting more kids now, and that's going to grow. And the irony in all of this is that American college hockey is going to get more Canadian, and Canadian junior hockey is going to get more American, right? And you're going to see a flow of kids. We've already seen it with them trying to pull kids from the national program. We saw J.P. Hurlburt playing Kamloops this year.
I don't know. I said earlier this year the U.S. national program might take a hit the other way.
And the Q kids, or the Q teams, I should say, are really going to go after the Boston area kids and that East Coast, and you're already seeing just a counterflow the other way.
Yeah, why not?
But the result is that junior hockey is now going to be the top teams in junior hockey for years and years and years have been built around 20-year-olds. And the teams that win the Memorial Cup and win championships in the OHL and QMJHL and WHL have typically been built around 19 and 20-year-olds. You cannot build your team that way any longer in Canada because you can't count that those kids are going to stick around. And so it's getting young. The junior game is going to get younger. It's going to be dominated more by 16 and 17 and and maybe some 18-year-old kids that decide to stick around. College is still not for everybody.
Right.
From an academic standpoint,
Right.
there's a lot that comes with it. Some kids want to be closer to home. So there will still be top players who stay, but increasingly there's more choice, and that choice is for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah, for sure. And I wish we were all one big happy family, but I think Porter Martone was like an unbelievable advertisement for the NCAA and what he said. Because the age-old debate, which you still hear today, well, why would anyone want to go to college and play only 34 games when you can play 70 games in junior? And he said everything that every college coach wanted to hear as to why that was beneficial, So I think that debate is almost over. Like, the NHL has enough GMs that used to be college guys and whatever, that where they don't care about that anymore. Like, the games is not the factor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, increasingly guys want to prioritize the experience of college hockey, the challenge of college hockey, the time in the gym that college hockey affords. The facilities are almost impossible for major junior teams to compete with. I've been in that gym at Munn, and I've been in that gym at Wisconsin, and it's pretty impressive, right? North Dakota, you go down the list. So that side of it is... It's just tough for junior hockey. The ownership in junior hockey is millionaires, not billionaires, right? That's always kind of the way that we've talked about it. Right. And it's also a bit of kick in the pants for them, though. Like, major junior owners now are investing in their facilities again, and they're going to their municipalities and their townships and asking about new buildings. And there's all sorts of new rinks planned in the OHL at the moment. And the OHL is looking into expansion into new markets, and I think we might see maybe an American market eventually, although USA Hockey has put up some walls walls around that a little bit. The Q would love to be in Maine and Connecticut.
Right.
But it's changing, and everybody's sort of figuring it out as we go here.
Well, listen, I appreciate your thoughts. Good to have your perspective. Scott Wheeler, The Athletic. Enjoy the game.